First visitors from Europe. If you had been in school 50 years ago and your teacher asked who discovered America, you would probably have answered Christopher Columbus. But was Columbus really the first? In a previous chapter, you have read that ancestors of today's Native Americans crossed into the Americas from Asia thousands of years ago. There are also many theories about people from Europe, Asia, and Africa who may have visited the Americas prior to Columbus. So far, we only have evidence of the arrival of a European people known as the Vikings. The Vikings were a seagoing people who originally lived in the part of northern Europe known as Scandinavia. In 1963, scientists found the remains of an early Viking settlement in Newfoundland. The findings supported the truth of old Viking stories. According to one story, a Viking named Leif Erikson and 35 others sailed from a colony on Greenland in 1001 to investigate reports of land farther west. They explored the region and spent the winter in a place they named Vinland. The Voyages of Columbus. Vinland existed only in myths for the next 500 years. Whether Christopher Columbus ever heard the stories is not known. However, Columbus believed he could reach Asia and the East by sailing west across the Atlantic Ocean. He never suspected that a huge land mass was blocking the way. Christopher Columbus grew up near Genoa, an important port on the west coast of Italy. In the 1470s, he settled in Portugal, which was Europe's leading seafaring nation. Columbus sailed on Portuguese ships, studied maps and charts, and learned about the world beyond Europe. From all this, he developed his idea for a voyage to Asia. Portugal's king showed little interest in Columbus's plan. The king hoped to reach Asia by following the route Bartholomew Dias and other Portuguese explorers were pioneering around southern Africa. He also believed the world was larger than Columbus had calculated. Thus, in his view, the voyage would be much longer than Columbus expected. For these reasons, Portugal refused to finance such a trip. Columbus did not give up. He moved to Spain and set his plan before King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. They liked Columbus's plan, but it took 6 years before they finally agreed to provide ships for the voyage. Setting sail. In August 1492, about 90 men, most of them Spaniards, prepared to make the voyage. Columbus's ships, the Niña, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, were tiny, between 55 and 90 feet long. Sailing with the wind, they covered up to 170 miles per day. Columbus predicted that they would reach Asia in 21 days. After a month at sea, there was no sight of land. The crew became restless and spoke of mutiny, or soldiers and sailors rebelling against their officers. Columbus held firm against the threat. Finally, on October 12th, a sailor spotted land. Coming ashore in a small boat, Columbus claimed the island for Spain. Curious islanders soon gathered on the beach. Believing he was in the Asian islands known as the Indies, Columbus called these people Indians. The next day he wrote in his journal, "I intend to go see if I can find the island of Japan." Columbus then sailed southwest to a large island. At first he thought it was Japan. Actually, Columbus was on the island of Cuba. His guides next pointed Columbus west to the island of Hispaniola. Columbus set sail to return to Spain in January 1493. Spain backs more voyages. In Spain, Columbus reported that there were huge amounts of gold in the land he referred to as the West Indies. The grateful monarchs made him governor of all he had claimed for Spain. In September 1493, he sailed again for the West Indies. This time he commanded 17 ships filled with 1,500 soldiers, settlers, and priests. The Spanish planned to colonize and rule the land they thought was the West Indies. They also intended to convert the people there to Christianity. On this second voyage, Columbus discovered other islands, including Puerto Rico. He found that the men he had left behind on Hispaniola had been killed by Indians. Not discouraged, Columbus built another settlement nearby and enslaved the local Indians to dig for gold. Within a few months, 12 of his ships returned to Spain, their cargo holds filled with some yellow metal. On his third expedition in 1498, Columbus reached the northern coast of South America and decided it was the Asian mainland. Spain permitted him to try to prove his claims in a fourth voyage in 1502. He returned to Spain 2 years later with his beliefs unchanged. Columbus died in 1506, still convinced that he had reached Asia. Checkpoint. Why were Spain's monarchs interested in the proposal Columbus made to them?